Holistically, the top row represents the sequential process that occurs as students progress from vague notions about academic content to fully formed knowledge. Studies show that students with similar cognitive capabilities and who invest equal effort in their studying can end up with drastically different outcomes based upon the metacognitive conditions of their thinking. Much like a GPS device, the human brain is goal-driven, which means that the brain will seek to satisfy the mission it is given. Ever misplace your keys or your phone? Your thinking becomes consumed with finding the lost item. You can't concentrate on anything else until you find it. Our preoccupation with locating the lost object is an innate design of our brain. A similar mental preoccupation occurs in academic work. When students are exposed to new material, a metacognitive process begins to unfold, regardless of whether they know it or not. Now, you will learn throughout this course that this process is happening subconsciously for most students. It has a life of its own, leading students aimlessly. The first column shows the beginning of the metacognitive process. It all begins with a metacognitive learning goal, which I call the trigger that sets the thinking sequence in motion. You should expect that most students won't realize the metacognitive learning goals that have been established in their mind. But you can be assured that just as a GPS device requires us to put in a destination before it begins rendering routes, students' learning goals are established in the subconscious planning phase of studying, which they will unknowingly use to guide and gauge their learning. One of your objectives will be to bring students' metacognitive learning goals to their awareness. I will show you how to accomplish this objective later. For now, just know that the goals play a pivotal role in the quality of knowledge students eventually produce. Now let's move to the second column of the top row, the thinking skills. Thinking skills are the mental tools students use to process information and experiences. The second column identifies a well-established hierarchy of thinking skills students employ while doing academic work. To continue the GPS metaphor, if the metacognitive learning goal is the destination that is entered into the device, the thinking skills are the routes that take students to their destination. Thus, the destinations and direction for learning are determined by the first and second columns of this diagram. Understanding the relationship between the first and second columns is vital to using this tool because students are likely unaware of the conditions that are set in the first column and are unskilled at using the thinking skills listed in the second column. So you will need to make these relationships clear to students at some point. Let's move to the third column of the diagram. The third column lists the outcomes that students' thinking skills produce. The learning outcomes are the culmination of the metacognitive thinking process. At this point, students have generated an outcome, something they did not know or could not do before they began interacting with the academic material. Each time students produce an outcome, they feel good, as dopamine is released as a neurochemical reward. Think about a time when you were studying something and you got that aha moment. Remember that jolt of energy that accompanied your new knowledge? That was the effect of the dopamine release. These good feelings must be handled properly because they will occur each time an outcome is generated, regardless of the outcome's appropriateness. So students could literally work themselves up into a mini euphoria while studying, only to later discover on an assessment that the knowledge they produced did not align with the outcomes that were being assessed, thus causing them to feel hopeless and even angry. Now, let's look at the fourth and final pillar of the diagram, the outcome valuation column. Recall that dopamine will be released regardless of whether the knowledge or skills that students produce matches the quality of knowledge teachers will be assessing. This automatic dopamine release wouldn't matter if students were learning for themselves. However, because students are learning for the purposes of passing assessments, they must produce certain qualities of outcomes. The fourth column helps students establish value to respective types of outcomes, thus providing students a way to measure the quality of their outcomes in real time, and most importantly, before they are assessed. We inherently differentiate things according to value. In the economy of academic work, different outcomes have different qualities of value. Teachers are the judges that determine whether students' work has sufficient value. However, teachers are not skilled at communicating the value they are seeking. Their lack of skill lies in the 3 C's dilemma I detailed in the 3 C's of Academic Work Unit. So it is quite common for students to perceive that the value of their work is much higher than their teacher's valuation. This misjudgment is inevitably the culprit behind underperformance. The outcome valuation column allows you to help students assess and adjust the quality of their thinking in ways that improves their learning and scores. Perhaps most importantly, as students use this diagram, they internalize the valuations and develop a more sophisticated and accurate knowledge confirmation system, one that will enable them to do cognitively complex work in college and throughout their careers. Now that we know each column's contribution to the diagram, let's review each column's role before moving on to explore the roles. Students' minds work like a GPS navigation device. First, we must input the proper destination. Next, we must use the proper thinking skills to get to the destination. The destination we reach will match the destination we entered up front. However, unlike a GPS device where we deliberately input the destination, students are often unaware of the destinations they must reach. The first column of the diagram includes metacognitive learning goals that serve as the latent destinations in students' minds. It is the trigger that sets students' thinking in motion. The second column serves as the mental roads students will take to get to the destination. Each road leads to a different type of destination. The third column represents the destinations that students have reached. Since the brain is goal-driven, the level of outcome in this column will always match the latent metacognitive goal in the first column. The fourth column establishes a better system for students to ascribe value to their thinking and knowledge. You will ultimately be able to help students use the diagram horizontally to trace their knowledge from its implicit cognitive triggers to the explicit outcomes, reverse engineer their learning from the outcomes back to the metacognitive conditions that led to the outcomes, and deconstruct learning outcomes and construct their knowledge.